Hi, this is Amy, and in this free training, I'm going to share with you my productivity workflow. I think productivity is incredibly important, and I also think it is something that people stumble a lot with because we all know that we should be more productive, but we also need to be honest with ourselves and look at what our life is set up like, what we really want to accomplish, and move forward from there. So if it is important for you to become more productive with your time in terms of creating or writing or publishing or building your business or whatever it is you want to do, I want to give you some strategies and a workflow in this training that I use and that I think is effective. Now, of course, you might want to tweak yours and have it be different. In fact, a lot of what I'm doing is things that I've tweaked from other trainings or other things that I've seen, but I've tweaked it more for me. So this is just an example of something that you could take if you want a good starting point and use to develop your own system. And starting with that is I really believe you should have a system. What ends up happening a lot of times is people say, oh, I should do this, or I'm going to do this week. And then they leave it at that, and then a lot of what they want to accomplish doesn't really happen because you need to follow through with it. That being said, I really also think you need to look at your obligations and excuses and be honest with yourself. And when I say obligations and excuses, what I mean are you may have certain obligations. You may have obligations to care for a child or an adult or to work a job or to be places at a certain time. Those are your obligations. That being said, those don't necessarily need to become excuses because a lot of times if you are focused on getting things accomplished, even if you don't have a lot of time, you can still get a lot done. And instead of using your obligations as excuses, if you're honest with the time you actually have and you focus and use that time, you will get much more done than you think you will. And that's why I think it's really important to be honest with yourself and to say, okay, I really want to get something done, and then when you get and look at that, you may feel like, I thought I wanted to do this, but I actually don't, or I have some fear about this, or I don't know what to do next. And those are often used as subconscious excuses that we tell ourselves to not move forward into the next step. But when you look and train yourself at looking at those, you'll find that once you become more honest with yourself, it's easier to move forward. So this is my three-part system. The first one is really what I like to think about is more like a big picture system. It's strategic planning and goal setting. So you decide what you want to accomplish and why. And this is also a place where a lot of people stumble because you may think you need to accomplish or do certain things like, okay, I need to do this or I'm not going to be successful. But for you to be truly productive and to set meaningful goals and accomplishments and things that you actually want to do, they need to be things that resonate with you. You may find that instead of finishing a novel, you may want to just start first and finish a 20 to 30 page short story. You may find that instead of doing a whole series and having to start from writing your series right at the beginning, you might just want to do a one-off type of thing. So you should really look here at what you want to accomplish and why, and this is something that should really be speaking to you, not to what you see in social media, what other people want, things like that. And then once you have that, you can plan out your yearly, quarterly, monthly, and weekly goals. That's the framework that I tend to use is yearly and then quarterly, which is every 3 months, monthly, and weekly. And once you start doing that, what'll end up happening is you'll be able to start coming up with actions and habits to accomplish these goals. And that is not necessarily where you're going to have everything you know about, but let's say, for example, your goal is to write a 50-page novella. And so you decide, okay, I'm going to write 1,000 words a week, which is very doable. So you can say, okay, I'm going to write 500 words 2 days a week, and I'm going to allocate a half hour to an hour to do that. And then that way you can sort of break it down very small, and you will know that you can do those habits. And why I mention not just actions but habits is because I'm a really big believer that habits make it so much easier for us to accomplish the things we want to, because if it's a habit, you do it. You don't have to think too hard about it. And that's also the reason I like to sort of put this out as a separate step, because I think with strategic planning, you're really doing a lot of thought and you're tying into your goals and dreams and emotions. And if you can do that and then actually have specific actions and habits that you can just look at and carry out, and have these two somewhat separated, it makes it much easier because you don't get stuck. You are dreaming and planning here, and then you have another section of your time where you're actually just carrying out different things, or you're listing the things you need to do, which is the next step, and then you're carrying them out. So that's why I think having these broken down into separate parts works well. A tool that I use that is sort of a bridge between this and the next one is a tool called Fractal Planner, and I will show you how that works and looks in the brief demo I do at the end of this. And what it does is it has nested to-do lists, and it's also good for task dumping, and I'll show you that. So what you could do is you could have your big strategic planning. You could even put on here yearly, quarterly, and so forth. And you could say, okay, my goal this year is to write a novel or to publish a novel. So it's not just writing it, but it's also getting it edited and published. So you could have that as a top level to do, and then underneath there, because it's nested, you can put all the other subtasks you have to do and then continue to break them down. So that's part one. Part two is actually accomplishing these tasks, and I have them as daily, weekly, and daily, where I'm really focused on that, because that's, we do everything's on a daily, and I find it easy to do that by looking at a week at a time, because you have your 7 days there. And so what I like to do is, after I've had those bigger goals, and then I've brain dumped specific sub goals and smaller tasks, then I take those very specific tasks to accomplish those goals and I transfer them over to a spreadsheet. And I fill in each day, and then I cross them off when it's complete. Now, in the middle of this, you will have to make some determinations about priorities, and that you can get very specific with that if you want. I don't really get that specific in terms of color coding or things like that. What I try to do is make sure that my high priority tasks get done during the best time for me, which is usually earlier in the day, and that's really when I do my writing and my creative thinking, and then the more administrative types of tasks get done later. And that way, one thing to keep in mind is that you're not confusing things that are necessarily urgent or things that you have a timetable on to things that are actually truly important to you, because unless you have a timetable on finishing your novel, it may always get pushed back because you think, well, it's not actually urgent. But if you treat it as important and then have it in your weekly and your daily tasks, you're actually going to get a bit done each day. But I haven't really talked too much about determining priority, and you can divide that up several ways. Like I said, I like to have the admin stuff later, and then the more important long-term stuff a little bit earlier in the day, but that's something you can sort of specify for how you want to handle it. Two tools I like to use are Rescue Time, which is a Google Chrome plugin, and it might be for other browsers too, which actually tracks what you spend your time on, and it'll track what sites you visit. Now, you do have to do a little bit of initial setup and go through occasionally and say, okay, I'm classifying this as this. For example, if you are going on Facebook, are you just doing social media, or are you actually doing something like work or research related? And Rescue Time has a free and paid option. I just use the free option. Cold Turkey is another one that I use, and there's a lot of applications like Cold Turkey, and basically what I do with that is I block sites. You would think, okay, well, you should be able to just not go to those sites, but sometimes with having habits, you can also have bad habits, and it's easy to go to certain sites. So I use that to block sites, particularly in the morning, so I am not wasting my time when I can be writing or being creative or producing content. The third part here is the check-in and evaluation. So we have the big picture planning, we have the medium to small picture, where we actually break everything into weekly and daily and smaller tasks and get it on our calendars. And then what we can do is we can check in and see what we've accomplished weekly, quarterly, and monthly. With weekly, it's pretty easy because you can look and see everything that you've done. And then with quarterly and monthly, I think with that, it's good to really see how you've done toward your specific goals. So again, if you're writing a book, maybe you could look at your quarterly progress in your monthly progress. So your monthly progress might be, okay, the 5,000 words, and then quarterly you should have 15,000 words, so you can keep more track of your progress. So let me show you here a little bit about how my system actually works. This is Fractal Planner, and you can actually see a little bit here of some of the stuff that I'm working on. And this tends to be a bit messy for me because I like to use it more as a brain dump, but there is a lot of things you can do here. So each of these that are out more like an outline are actually a fractal, and if you click on it, then you get these subtasks, and as you can see, you can go down as far as you want. And then you can also highlight tasks, add specific subtasks, things like that. It isn't perfect. It's difficult to reorder this. You have to go to another screen to reorder some of these larger ones here. But I like it just because I think it works very well for brain dumping and also keeping a very large master list, and it also has some other things that you can do with this. It's fractalplanner.com. It is $10 a month, so you do have to pay each month for it, which is unfortunate, but I like it so much that I've decided to stick with it. And then I have a variety of spreadsheets here that I use in terms of yearly goals, monthly, things like this. This hourly task spreadsheet, I have to say I got this from Deb Drum, my business partner, from time to time. I really liked it. Basically, you put the month or the week here, then you have your days of the week. I don't work on Sundays, and I usually do half a day Saturday for the most part, so that's not quite filled in yet. And then you would just write what you're going to be working on here. So I'm working on this. I'm actually right on schedule here. I'm working on this productivity training for you, and that's what I'm working on. And then once I'm done here, I would cross it off. I like to leave it there so I can see what I've done, but I use the strike through so I can say, okay, I've actually done this. And sometimes I will move things to later in the week. I'll say, okay, I'm not going to get to that, and I'm going to move it here. But you will be surprised how much work you can actually get done when you actually have things scheduled for a specific time period. I hope you've enjoyed this productivity training and that you can use this system if you don't have one that works for you and take it and make it your own.